Good morning. Welcome today on this Tuesday morning, September 14th. Welcome, everyone. Mike and Joe Stromberg, welcome to you today. We are in Proverbs 14 today. Alyssa Tucker, good morning. Good to see you. Richard Van Allen, welcome. Good morning to you, Mom. Thank you for being here this morning. Wait for a few other names before we jump into our proverb of the day. Jonathan Cassis, good morning. Dana Krieshak, welcome to you this morning. I want to continue to welcome everyone, especially those who are watching later today. Welcome to you. As always, I appreciate your comments. If you're watching later, I see that you've watched and appreciate that. And Janisa, welcome to you. Good morning. One of our regular viewers is having a birthday today, and that is Kathy Fuente. Jim and Kathy are often 7 o'clock viewers, see their names frequently, so I want to wish Kathy a very happy birthday today. Lori Agassi, good morning to you. So I'm in Proverbs 14 today, and verse, I think it's 4. So now we're into initially the Proverbs, the Proverb writers laying this foundation of how wisdom is from God, and there is a fool and a wise person, and he spent a lot of time distinguishing between the two. What are the qualities of the wise person? What are the qualities of the fool? You want to be like the wise person and avoid being like the fool. And now the book of Proverbs by now is well into just giving you all kinds of proverbs, just 1 to 2 verses of sayings that if you keep them all into account, you will be like the wise person, and sayings that also highlight the actions of a fool, and so on. And so here is a wise saying, chapter 14, verse 4, which says this: "Where there are no oxen, the manger is clean, but abundant crops come by the strength of the ox." So the idea here is you need to choose. You have a choice before you. You have the option A clean manger, a clean stall. Option B, a lot of crops. And so both are considered gain. So what do you value more? Do I want to have a lot of yield of my crops, or do I want a clean stall, a clean manger? You can't have both, apparently, because what makes the difference is owning oxen. So if you're going to have lots of crops, you have to put up with the fact that you also own oxen and they create a mess. You need to feed them, you need to water them, you need to clean up after them, you need to care for them when they get sick, whatever it is. You have to weigh the cost and the benefit versus the risk, or the risk versus reward. We have these sayings that we do, or the gain versus the loss. And so keep in mind that God desires us to live a wise life. He desires us to live a skillful life, a good life. When we live a wise and skillful life, we have a good name. And a person with a good name has more influence. And a person of influence who is also righteous, leads people in the way of righteousness and ultimately to the Lord. So some of these sayings, well, most of these proverbs, we wouldn't put in the category as spiritual, yet God does. God puts them in the category of spiritual, as a part of the world as He created it and makes it. There are paths that are beneficial, and then there are paths that are not beneficial. He wants us to walk on the paths that are beneficial according to the way he's constructed the world. So he gives us these proverbs to walk wisely. So what do we have to gain here by looking at this proverb about the ox? You have to, if you're going to value one part of a gain, you're going to have to realize there's going to be loss involved. You're going to have a dirty manger. You're going to have extra maintenance and so on. And so this is the point. And it is very wide, has broad application. This principle is very beneficial. And we call it another way of, like a modern idiom that we use that is similar, that you may have heard, if you haven't heard the one about the oxen, which most of us probably haven't, is modern idiom would be, if you're going to have an omelet, there's the gain, you need to be willing to break some eggs. That would be a modern idiom that roughly translate the same idea. And it carries this idea of we have to look at the trade-off of any decision we make. And the idea of a trade-off, and I'll give you the definition of a trade-off according to Wikipedia. We know this innately, but I'll give a little bit more accurate definition. It says, a trade-off is a situational decision that involves diminishing or losing one quality or quantity in return for gains in other aspects. So when we make decisions in a particular situation, we recognize that there's going to be gain, but many times when we gain something, we're also saying we're going to lose something. We're going to lose a quality or a quantity of something else. And when we weigh that decision, we think, okay, is what I'm losing outweighing what I'm gaining, or vice versa? Let me give you some examples of this. I wrote down several. So, like a job change. So you have the obvious gain is potentially, if I change jobs, I'm going to have more money. Maybe this new job I'm looking at is going to give me a lot more money. Who wouldn't want that, right? But what are you losing? Perhaps that job is 2 hours away. Maybe we have to move. Or I have this extended commute. How is that going to eat into my family time or other things that I already am doing that I have to say no to now because I have this longer commute that adds time to my day? This is the idea. And some people will say, nope, it's just that gain, that perceived gain is just going to cost too much. I don't want to lose this time I have with my family, or I don't want to uproot my family and move to chase after this job. Sometimes the gain is deferred. Like if you look at a job change from a different viewpoint, maybe I'm going down in pay. I'm changing my job and I'm going to go down in pay for the gain of it's local. I'm not going to have to commute. Or the gain is this job that I'm moving into has a lot more advancement opportunities. Ultimately, I'm going to be where I want to be, but initially I have to consider the loss of income. But in the big picture, I'm going to gain I'm going to have greater advancement. I really like this job better. The people I work with or work for, these are the kind of decisions we make all the time. And so what I think is helpful with regard to this picture, first of all, you weigh both. That's wise. But I would offer some of these other things in life experience. You all know these to be true, but sometimes we can, if we consider the path of the fool for a second, which isn't named here in this proverb, but we'll consider the path of the fool just for rounding out how we're talking about this. The fool has a tendency to over-focus on either the gain or the loss and misses out on the wisdom of making the decision. So, for example, how many of us in our lives, particularly in our younger years, we wanted something, some new thing, and we wanted it so bad. We perceived the value of having that thing so greatly. We overvalued it that we just took the plunge and we bought that thing. And only later to really find out, wow, I'm losing in other areas of life that I just didn't even consider. For instance, a car. Um, I'll tell you what, I have had many old, rundown cars in my life that I longed for. A nice car, a new car, a shiny car, whatever. And Martha and I, we had an opportunity to go. We went onto a car lot, and we looked at cars because we were like, man, we're just so tired of our clunky car at this time of our life. There was just the two of us. We hadn't had children yet, and we found this car that was a two-door sedan. It was red. It had turbo, sunroof. We loved the car. It was so fun to test drive. And we were sold on this car. We just thought, this is great. This is going to be so much fun to have and to own and so on. We bought the car. There were two losses that we didn't consider. One, what the payment would feel like after the newness of that car went away, which most of us, we get caught up in that, right? Oh, it's totally worth it to make this car payment until about, a year into it, and you're like, ugh, I hate this car payment. This car, the newness of this car is long worn off. But another loss that we considered in that car was the fact that it was a two-door sedan, and that same year we bought it, we got pregnant with Morgan, and which was great. We loved, also, but now we have this car seat. We're trying to get in and out of the back center seat of this car. But it was a two-door, it wasn't a four-door. We thought, what were we thinking? We knew we wanted to have kids. We knew we were about at that time of life to have children. What on earth were we thinking getting this two-door sedan? So that'd be an example of, how we overvalue the gain, and we willingly blind ourselves to what we're giving up, to the loss. That would be the path of the fool. And this is why this proverb is so important to us, this idea of the trade-off. We really have to take both in mind. Another path of foolishness would be to overvalue the loss. To think that, and it keeps us from making really good, healthy decisions in our life because there is any loss at all. Well, I just want there to be only win-win in my life. I want my cake and I want to eat it too. Because we want to avoid the discomfort of any loss at all. And that makes it hard as well, where we start to second guess our choices. Because we are starting to see the downside of things, or it's like, oh, I shouldn't see any downside. Or the downside is a little too painful, and I don't think I should experience that. I think, in some decisions, we keep from making decisions because we overvalue not wanting to experience any loss or very little loss, and we think we should have more win-wins in our life. And so we limit ourselves in that sense, in that we don't ultimately gain the great crops because we're just don't like that. Ox looks a little bit too dirty for me. The manger's a little bit too dirty. I used to quote this proverb all the time in my 20s because we had this great youth group, lots of kids and great fun things that were happening. But we were in a church building that a lot of people valued having great amount of cleanliness, and they were very careful about the things that we just didn't want that to get broken. And when you have a lot of kids moving in and out of any space who aren't thinking as carefully as adults do about how they move and touch things and so on, things would get broken. Or We had so much movement of bodies in and out that the carpet would get dirty. There was something spilled, and the people who were of a different value set, thinking they just see the stain on the carpet. They don't see all the ministry that's taking place, and the kids that are being ministered to, and their excitement to sing worship songs or be involved in this youth group activity. All they see is the stain. All they see is the loss. Like, what's happening here? Why is this stain on the carpet? Why did this thing get broken? It's like, well, we have a youth ministry. If you can have a clean manger, or you can have the gain of all what's happening in ministry. And so there was always I thought about this proverb all the time when I was in my 20s and doing youth ministry and so on, because there was always that risk reward factor that people were uptight about the loss. And so we can get overly focused on the gain, and we don't consider the loss until we're feeling it, like, ew, that wasn't a good choice. Or we can be overly focused on the loss, and it keeps us from the great benefit that we could have if we, but we're waiting around for some opportunity that has no loss of quality, no loss of quantity. We just want the gain. And those situations, though they exist, they don't exist with great, they don't have a lot of those kind of opportunities out there. So we limit ourselves ultimately. Let me just give you some more examples, because the benefits and losses aren't simply material. Those are easier to quantify. Many of them are relational. Many of the profit loss in areas have to do with our reputation and approval and things like that. Let's think about relational. So single versus married. Do I stay single? Sometimes as single people we think, I just want to be married. And we see the benefit of being married so great that we'll marry someone without considering what we're giving up. and the qualities of that person we're going to compromise just so we can have that one thing we think we desire until we get there and we're like, oh, wow, this isn't what I thought it was, or we're married and you got to understand there's risks and rewards to all of this, right? So let's just very practically, I don't mean to downplay singleness or upplay singleness or marriage or whatever, but you have to understand that there are some job opportunities that are only really fitted for single people. There are benefits of being single with regard to you can invest deeply in a number of relationships, whereas a married person really has to focus primarily on their spouse as far as their deepest relationship. Yes, they can have deep relationships outside of that, but your primary relationship, you've made this commitment to be very invested in one person. And there's great benefit to that, but there is some loss of quality or quantity in the other relationships you can enjoy or pursuits of life. There are some couples, we talk about whether we should have children or not have children. Some couples say, yeah, we don't want to have any children because we want to have, the gain of all these opportunities and things we can enjoy without children. But there's a loss of not being able to have, invest in children and raising them. But having children also comes at cost. They're expensive. They break your heart at times. You get it. So we weigh these things both not just materially, but relationally as well. You think about decisions about your education for your children. Should I do private education, public education, homeschool? Each of those has benefits and losses. And the wise path is having a balance in the trade-off of these things. And sometimes the benefit and gain has to do with approval. I have a little sticky note of something I wrote that I put on my computer screen because my natural tendency is to be approval oriented. So you have to choose who you want your approval from. You can't have approval of everybody. And so sometimes I recognize that if I have an over sense of desiring someone's approval, sometimes my leadership decisions can be called into question if I'm seeking self-approval over the health or overall benefit of the group over which I'm leading. And so I have to be able to put my self-interests aside. That's the quality of a servant leader, in order to benefit the group. And sometimes that means I have to deal with one person who doesn't like me. in order to see the greater benefit of the group being healthy and good. And so when we see the trade-off of things, what we perceive to be gain and what we perceive in that situational decision making to be loss, we have to weigh both and make sure that there's a balance between the two for the benefit of everyone, the benefit of yourself, the benefit of what you perceive to be what you're gaining. So I wrote down other examples, but you get this idea. And how you could see how God, he puts this into our lap in order for us to live the skillful life, to live a life that ultimately, if we make not just one decision, but a series of decisions over courses of years, will result in a completely different life at the end of that 10 years. If you make a bunch of decisions based upon the wisdom of this one proverb alone, you're going to be in quite a different place in 10 years than if you were to neglect this proverb and be in a completely different place. Maybe you have, maybe one leads to a lot of debt and your priorities are out of order and so on because you're not really weighing these two situations well, or the other, you've taken risks, you've made some consistently good decisions, considering the loss and being okay with some loss in order to gain what you perceive is of greater value. And in 10 years, you're going to be in a completely different place of your life. So you see how this proverb, this single proverb, God gives us as a treasure that will ultimately gain us so much if we put it into practice. And so these are great tools. It's a great tool for those who tend to be indecisive. It really is helpful to us to make consistently good decisions. The indecisive person often is indecisive because they don't want to have any loss. They don't like the loss. You're going to have loss. You have to consider what you're gaining and put the two in perspective, into balance. So anyway, that's the thought for today. And hope that you are doing well today. Be blessed today by the words of this wise saying. And we'll see you again tomorrow morning.